We are back. It is another edition of Colts Corner with yours truly. That would be Kevin Bowen. Eddie Garrison, as always, joining me here. We are in, I would say, one of the quieter periods of the offseason. There's not a ton. Super pressing. Obviously, we've got some quarterback dominoes that are playing out right now. You know, you're into whatever, the second wave of free agency. You know, the Colts actually do have a good amount of cap space. I would think they're going to still do some stuff, but we'll see exactly how that will unfold. Owners' meetings next week. So, Eddie, I'm thinking next week we'll probably stick with another kind of Wednesday pod. Just recap if we do hear from Jim Irsay. Sounds like we'll definitely hear from Chris Ballard. Shane Steichen, I know, does his annual, AFC coaches one day, NFC coaches the next day from the owners' meetings. And we are less than a month away from the draft. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you to Mark Dykton for filling in for me last week. He did a good job on it, as usual.
That's debatable, but yeah. 4
weeks from Thursday, NFL Draft Day. Kev, are you excited?
I am.
You gonna start watching Kevin Costner's Draft Day?
I actually watched that one time going to a Colts game on a flight. I thought it was horrible.
What?
Yeah, I just thought it was typical sports. I feel like sports movies can be so mediocre at times. I am excited. I'm not necessarily the craziest draft nerd, but I'm a big fan of college football, and I get how the importance of it in regards to the lifeblood of a football team, and certainly when you look at the Colts and where their needs are at, boy, man, it just seems like it's got to be a tight end with one of those first two picks. I'd almost be. It's probably dumb of me to say it, given Chris Ballard's draft record, but I'd almost be stunned if they got to round 3 and they hadn't taken a tight end.
Round 3 or round 4?
Yeah, it's probably. I know. I'm always.
Did you hear him talk about interior offensive line has some depth in the middle rounds?
I just don't see any free agent answers in the tight end group, so I don't. That's why I tend to think round 1 or 2.
I was thinking linebacker.
Yeah, but linebacker that
not early, but I was talking about in the middle rounds.
Yeah, I think they get deep down. Yes, they oftentimes say we like our tight ends, but then they usually throw in a caveat of we know what a great tight end on a third down can mean to you. And I mean, it's just. I think that is the direct help that Anthony Richardson could really use. You aren't doing a whole lot directly for him this year.
No.
But I think just having a little bit even Daniel Jones, just having some easy to that passing game, having some simple, having some boring, having some methodical nature to it would help you out. So today's pod will kind of look at, again, the Colts are certainly through the first wave of free agency. I think there's a lot you can take away from where things are at right now. It's almost like a reset of the roster. So I think look at a couple takeaways, Eddie, and then we'll get to Twitter questions after that.
Sounds good, Kev. You can view your 10 takeaways article on 1075thefan.com. We'll just highlight a few of these, Kev. I'll start toward the bottom. One that we haven't talked about on this podcast is a kicking competition. We talked about the quarterback competition a great deal, but is there potentially one with Matt Gay and Spencer Schrader?
It's funny, Eddie. Did you watch the behind the scenes?
I haven't yet.
Thing the Colts did last night. They always do great work. Shout out to their production team, and I hate to single out names. I know I'm not going to say everybody, but Matt Wilkenine and Larry Overton and Kevin Connors and that crew over there, really good stuff. There was a comment in there from Chris Ballard early on. They kind of set the scene for the offseason of, here we are, and kind of a scene setter, I guess, to put it simply. And Ballard's going back to that the season-ending press conference, and I was reminded kind of how highly emotional he was, and those words were some strong words he gave back in January, and he mentioned the word, and I guess the phrase, "We need more uncomfortability." Gosh, I just feel like I totally butchered that. Can you say it?
Uncomfortability.
Gosh, that sounded just so much better. Mine sounded like I just
And you've been talking already for 3 hours a day.
Well, yeah, but boy, that sounded horrific there. Thank you. They need more of that uncomfortable nature across their roster.
There you go.
If I could go my roundabout way in saying it. And so, Eddie, I'll ask you this. On March 26th, what's uncomfortable?
Quarterback position, for sure.
Is it better or uncomfortable?
Uncomfortable.
Okay.
Because
where else?
I would probably say
Like, I'd say the secondary is better.
interior offensive line at center and right guard. Just because you don't know what you got there yet.
Yeah, I would say more unknown than uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know we're kind of splitting hairs here with some words. I guess I bring all of this up to say,
Pass rush?
like, in the secondary, you've gotten better.
Yeah.
I think that's very clear. But I don't really know where you've greatly increased competition necessarily. Like head-to-head battles at a acceptable level. I would say kicker is honestly one of them.
Could you make the case for that starting second cornerback? Because you have Jalen Jones and Juju Brents. If Juju Brents is healthy, can he compete with Jalen Jones for the other starting spot on the outside?
I think Jalen Jones has earned it. Juju Brent.
I mean, I agree with you, but
Juju's got a long way to go before I can say he is pushing. I mean, maybe he will down the road, but I mean, Jalen Jones has started what? Probably the last 30-some games for you?
Right.
Something like that. So, again, secondary I kind of put to the, like, secondary, I think we're in agreement. They've gotten better, but I just don't know where else on the roster it's currently uncomfortable. And maybe the draft will obviously lend to some of these answers, but I guess what I'm getting at is, like, with $20 million in cap space, I feel like they still could do some things to create more of that. Like, I think D-line, I'm a little bit confused by. Are Dio Dangbo snaps just going to Samson Ebukam? Like, they're not the same player. But Dio Dangbo played the most snaps of any defensive lineman in the NFL. Ryan Kelly to Tanner Bortolini seems obvious. Okay, what about right guard? You know, that's a little bit more, again, kind of in the unknown category to it. Linebacker, is EJ Speed exiting and Jalen Carlisle is going in there? Or to your point, are they going to draft a linebacker? And, you know, this conversation might be a bit moot a month from now. So, again, Eddie, I guess, you know, from a kicking standpoint, I mean, I do think Spencer Schrader's arrival, I'm kind of like, wait a minute, is there something here? Now, again, I guess to focus on kicker for a second, Schrader's never kicked from longer than 50 yards in the NFL. Matt Gay didn't miss from shorter than 50 yards in the NFL last year. It's kind of weird how the Matt Gay issue is something we have yet to see Spencer Schrader do. Granted, I thought Schrader had a great leg in college at Notre Dame. I thought he was a little bit more inconsistent in the other kicks. So, you know, maybe there's a bit of a competition there. And again, maybe this point is moot. You know, maybe we get to April 26th and they have signed another player or two that you would throw into potential starter, depth piece, competition, however you want to define it. Obviously, the draft could play into that as well. So, yeah.
I'm just kind of thinking of, like, other positions of where you feel uncomfortable about. I can't really think of any.
Right, and basically what they've done so far in free agency is two massive swings in the secondary.
Yeah.
They obviously have, like, is Daniel Jones better than Joe Flacco?
Ooh, that's a
Or
good question.
is he just younger?
Good question.
So they've kind of swapped those two out, I guess, just to kind of move on from that point. You know, retooled a little bit of the running back depth chart, retooled a little bit of the defensive tackle depth chart.
I would still. Who else do they have on roster at running back besides Khalil Herbert and Jonathan Taylor?
Goodson's still, I think Goodson's still under contract. And then Hall, Evan Hall.
Oh, I forgot about Evan.
Yeah. So, now again, they need to draft a running back. Certainly.
I would agree.
Yeah, they need to draft a running back, and I think I would invest one in the middle round. So it's interesting that you started at kicker because I'm kind of like, yeah, I do think there might be a competition there.
Isn't there financial ramifications too with it?
I want to say the Matt Gay guarantees, I think they might be over. It's not massive, but that is probably worth pointing out.
I know now, James Boyd highlighted it on your show in the morning. I think it was like last week or
yeah. Again, I don't think it's
ago.
Substantial, but it's there. I mean, I probably look at this. Like, Richardson has to, I think, trip and fall over the curb to lose the starting job. I would think Matt Gay would need to almost get hit by a car.
Right.
To lose this. Like, I don't. Are you really going to bench a guy who hasn't. He was 61 of 61 inside of 50 yards last year.
I mean, but why are you bringing in a guy on a 2-year
Right.
deal?
I know. I mean, trust me. I mean, there is something there. But, you know, to all of a sudden supplant the incumbent, I think it's got to be a significant win for Schrader. I guess is what I'm getting at.
I don't want to spend too much time on this either, but like, just from the thinking of this from our point of view, when we go out there for training camp, Kevin, they don't practice kicking all that much, maybe like once or twice.
No, it's a great point.
Now, if you're having a quote-unquote competition at that position, you're going to have to spend, you would probably guess, more time on it.
Yeah,
no?
I know.
Thus taking away time from your quarterback competition.
I feel like I've brought that up before, and the Colts have said, well, they sometimes kick like on the far field down there, and I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know. It's not really like 11-on-11 kicking. I don't know. There's
no
still,
live.
Yeah,
part of it.
And not that they're going crazy live, normally, but no, that is a fair point to bring up.
The next one I was going to bring up was the defensive line need open, because I was wondering what you meant by that, but you kind of summarized and cleared that up already for me with the Dio departure and trying to find a replacement for him, because there's not really a clear replacement, because Neville Gallimore?
Yeah, Neville Gallimore, yep.
Yeah, because he comes in and he's primarily a D tackle. And
right, I think he's more of your 3 technique, maybe could even back up Grover a little.
So pretty much replacing Raekwon Davis.
Yes, exactly. Whereas, again, Samson Ebekom's more the edge, whereas Dio, yeah, he certainly gave you edge snaps, but he also can give you some interior snaps as well. So, you go back to the combine. I mean, clearly Ballard wanted to point out Ebekom. He wanted to point out Latu, moving him around with Lou Anarumo. But if I gave you trenches and tight end in round 1 or the field at pick 14, what would you take? So you have one pile that's tight end, O-line, and D-line, and the other pile is the rest of the positions.
I'm definitely taking the trenches / tight end, and I am emptying my entire bank account on it.
What if I took tight end out of it? And I put 3 piles. Tight end is one, O-line, D-line's the other, and then the rest of the positions.
That's still a good one. I don't know where I would put it.
That one has a little bit more debate.
I would say D, trade back. Have we completely forgotten about that part of it? Like, they could trade back if they love Colston Loveland.
Well, let's go back to Ballard's words in January, because for a month and a half, Eddie, I kept on reminding people, words. These are the words.
Yeah.
Okay, on 3 different categories. The 3 categories were defense. Defense, he said, we needed to do some change. We need to make some changes. All right, here we are 2 months later. They've changed their defensive coordinator, and they've really reshaped their secondary.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that box has been checked. The next step was free agency. The free agency words were very different, and they attacked free agency in a manner that he hasn't done really at all in his tenure here. Okay, that box has been checked. All right, let's go to the third one, the draft. He really didn't say anything different about the draft.
Mm-mm.
Not at all.
No.
So you bring up trading back, and I don't walk out of this room right now because I'm like, well, yeah, he didn't say that he was going to change his draft philosophy. Now, last year, were they knocking on the door with the Giants? Sure. And, if you have Warner, Loveland, all of a sudden rated a lot higher than the other, and you start to see, one of them get taken, whatever, around, 8 or 9, would you trade up? Who knows? But I guess getting back to D-line, for a position you rotate so much, for a position that Lou Anarumo is going to evaluate differently, or I should say wants to scout differently than Gus Bradley, then yes, I do think that is something that still needs a decent resource invested in it here this offseason.
Because if you go back to the tight end portion of this, Kev, you look around and you got Atlanta, you got Arizona, Cincinnati, Seattle, Tampa Bay.
The Jets.
Denver. Those are all teams that don't really need tight ends. Because Evan Ingram signed with Denver. Tampa Bay's got Cade Otton. They really like him. Seattle, that's your question mark.
I feel like I keep on coming back. Was it Jets and Saints, maybe?
I was talking about teams behind the Colts.
Oh, I was talking about teams that are trading that would take them ahead of you. Yeah, the whole tight end draft debate I think is interesting.
Because in Daniel Jeremiah's latest mock 3.0, he's got the Colts with Tyler Warren at 14.
I did a mock draft look where, I try to go to the most reputable sites and just pick a handful of mock drafts every couple of weeks. Eddie, all of them had tight end.
Right.
All of them. I mean, it's amazing how the consensus has gone there. So we'll obviously see how it all plays out. But D-line, I mean, that position, if they announced that at 14, I mean, it wouldn't stun me given Ballard's track record. And, on paper right now, your starting group is what? Latu and Ebukam opposite each other.
Right.
With Grover and Buckner in the middle. And so your top backup is Taekwon. And then you're getting into Adetomiwa Adebare, and you're getting into, what is Isaiah Land and Gallimore. I mean, like, it's not a typical Ballard D-line looking group right now, especially with Ebukam coming off the Achilles at the age of 30.
Mm-hmm. Let's move to the next one. We'll highlight two more, Kevin. We'll let the listeners go to 1075thefan.com and read some of the other ones. Let's talk about that new-looking offensive line. No more Ryan Kelly, no more Will Fries. Of course, the Braden Smith situation has now played itself out. He's returning. He took, $10 million cut almost? A little over $9 million on a pay cut. Helped the Colts save a little bit of cap there. So you're probably going to be looking next year to replace him. So you're going to have a new center in Tanner Bortolini, and you'll have a new right guard that is still to be determined. And then obviously Braden Smith, Quentin Nelson, and Bernard Ryman.
So center, I think it's pretty obvious. Obviously Kelly exiting and then Tanner Bortolini taking over. Now, we should point out, Kelly handled so much on his plate from a responsibility standpoint.
Yeah,
so,
pre-snap identification, right?
Yeah, just so much. So obviously Bortolini will have to handle that. Right guard is certainly up in the air. How do you view Matt Gonzalez? Do you view him as swing tackle? Do you view him as he can play guard in the league? Are you looking 1 year down the road when Braden Smith's a free agent and thinking about a new right tackle? And then go back to, the Colts believe there's good mid-round O-line depth in this draft. Okay, so are we looking at another Gonzalez-Bortolini type pick come round 3 or 4? That is something that I'm not slamming the door shut here at all. So we aren't used to going into a season with 2 open starting jobs. And let's say Gonzalez starts. Then your backup is what, Blake Freeland? And I get you get into a pinch where if all of a sudden Braden Smith got hurt in a game, whatever, Gonzalez might move out there, and then you'd put, Danny Pinter at guard or Wesley French.
Right.
They re-sign. So I think the answers to usually you dressed 8 offensive linemen on a game day. At least 1 is not on the roster, and I'd argue 2 of those 8.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So, I thought Kevin Zeitler maybe, who signed with the Titans, that was kind of some people asked me about Mekhi Becton, who I think ended up going to the Chargers. Those types of signings. Chris Reed, remember him from a handful of years ago?
Sure.
Who signed at guard. That sort of signing I feel like is kind of still missing from this team. So could you do that? To me, round 1 would be way too rich. But, again, given the track record of Ballard, you never know. I tend to think those middle-ish rounds, find another sort of Bortolini Gonzalez. But point blank, you're just going to need young dudes to show up.
What the hell are we doing over here, Kevin? Why? Why are we wearing Tennessee socks?
I do have my Rocky Top socks on. I went to my first SEC football game now, 2 years ago?
I know that, but why are we wearing them? It's Purdue week.
It is
16. Why are you wearing those?
It is indeed Purdue week. Are the Vols really? Are they getting by Kentucky?
I don't know. For my bracket's sake, I need Kentucky. For my heart's sake, I don't want either one.
I believe I read it would be the first time in the history of college basketball that a team has beaten one opponent 3 times in a year when that opponent has been ranked in the top 10 all 3 times.
Oh, interesting.
Kentucky's trying to do that with Tennessee.
That's fascinating. Last one from your top 10 takeaways from the Colts. 2025 free agency. Will quarterback miracle hit? That's the $1 million question now, isn't it?
Well, yeah, literally millions dollars of questions. Yeah, one of them. Miracle is a strong word. I think it's very fair to say for Daniel Jones to all of a sudden become a franchise quarterback, or Anthony Richardson to become your franchise quarterback, both of them would be doing something unprecedented. In Daniel Jones' case, it would be 70 starts into a career, not to mention how many starts did he have at Duke. Him all of a sudden turning it around, unprecedented. Throw out Norm Van Brocklin or Warren Moon to me. For Richardson, with the completion percentage that he's had to turn it around, again, a bit unprecedented. Josh Allen, wasn't even at these sorts of levels. So this gets into the age-old topic, and again, we probably should focus on a Richardson-specific pod at some point here before the offseason program begins. I think it's April 21st for that day. But I will reiterate this. When you hear competition, because Chris Ballard did have a few words last night on that, behind the series piece about Daniel Jones and about the competition, and we think it'll be spirited. We don't want to just go out there and sign a guy. We wanted to sign a guy that we feel like could really, increase the level of competition. In order to get an actual increased level of play in either of the two, I would argue you almost need to fully commit to the entire offseason load of reps to one or the other. If you just dilly-dally around and Eddie Garrison, you get reps one day and I get reps the next day, and then you get reps and I get it, are two mediocre to bad quarterbacks just going to continue to be mediocre and bad?
I mean, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none, right?
Well, right. And if you throw in an adjective of the type of quarterback that they have been,
yeah,
it's just. And I get it. There's the bird on the other shoulder that says, well, what do you mean? Anthony Richardson hasn't earned the right to be taking 100% of the offseason reps. Mm-hmm. I can hear that. But if you're going to try and – it's almost like you could have this competition play out, this battle, and, boy, back and forth. And, man, you feel like Richardson's got the lead. And then one day Jones has got the lead. And then all of a sudden you get to September 1st and you're like, all right, here's our winner. And we don't think he's gotten any better this offseason. He just wasn't as bad as the other guy. I think that's what makes this battle in particular so difficult. I referenced it last week. For the most part with Flacco, he fell out of bed and you knew who he was.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Jones and Richardson, they just aren't at that stage in their careers at all. Again, we got 10 takeaways up on the website, 1075thefan.com. Continue to have off-season content up there throughout. A little bit more tight end focus coming up next week. Shane Steichen will, if anyone was curious, will continue to call plays in 2025. A little bit more on that. But that is some of the content up on 1075thefan.com.
Is comparing Anthony Richardson falling out of bed in
Flacco falling out of bed, right?
No, I'm going to Anthony Richardson now. If you're comparing Anthony Richardson, or you're making an analogy here of Richardson falling out of bed and trying to figure out what you're going to get, is that comparable to a toddler of getting up and seeing what type of day they're going to have?
Yeah, there is some.
Have we entered that stage with Max Bowen?
Yeah, there is.
Or are we past that stage yet?
There is some volatility. Yeah, there is some volatility. There. Can I go a little judge or join here?
Okay.
From a parenting standpoint.
Okay.
You are, and not to put too much on your plate here, Eddie. You hope one day to be a parent, correct?
Well, I am a parent of 3 animals, if that counts.
A human parent, I guess.
Okay.
Well, maybe you've dealt with this a little bit more than others, and I hope for one day, for Olivia's sake, that you have the blessing that I have had. So Max Bowen is in the bathtub the other night, and I've got that water at a perfect temp. Sometimes it can be a little difficult. We're dealing with Midwest Indiana weather. From a temperature standpoint, you never know what it's going to be. I feel very good about the bath temp. Getting them both in there in a quality time can be a little difficult, so I'm feeling good. And next thing you know, he's got the look on his face like, I'm about to pee in this bath.
Oh, no.
And he's standing up, and he's getting ready to pee. I can see it in his face. And usually his pee, not to get too graphic here, and feel free to fast forward for a minute or two if you would like on the podcast right now, usually his pee hovers right around about a tablespoon of liquid.
Okay.
He's not.
Well, I would hope it would be liquid.
He's 2.5 years old. He's not.
Yeah.
He's not giving us a pint of urine here. So I decide to just throw my hands out there.
What?
And catch the urine.
What?
Now.
No, you did not.
My hands are about 10 feet away from yours.
No.
At this point.
I'm glad I didn't shake your hand this morning.
Maddie very quickly was like, "What are you doing?" And I don't know why instinctually I did this. I thought to myself, if I can catch it, again, it's only about a tablespoon or a teaspoon. If I can catch it all and then throw it in the toilet behind me, I will have saved the bath water. Rosie will be, if he pees in that water, Rosie's losing it. There's no chance she's going to get in there. Not to mention he's sitting in, urine-filled water here, and now I've got to drain it all.
Urine-filled, it's a teaspoon, Kevin.
Right, I know. So I decided
Have you
to
gone to a public pool with your kids?
I decided to do that. Well, I mean, we're bathing them, not throwing them into the public pool.
Okay, but I'm trying to figure out here what's the fine line of difference. You're going to a public pool
Well,
where everyone pees in the pool.
Yeah, but he's wearing a swim diaper, and his own urine is a little bit different. So I decided to throw it over the shoulder. I think I did a good job of getting that. I washed my hands.
Literally threw it over the shoulder too?
Well, yeah, into the toilet.
Okay.
And I washed my hands for a good 5 minutes after that, and here we are. Judge or join?
Judge.
Yeah, it sounds like you are.
Did you bring this up with James Boyd and Jeff Rickard in the morning?
I don't think I have yet. I brought it up to my class at IU the other day, and
No, you did not.
They were absolutely horrified.
Your students were horrified? Yeah, I would be too.
Should we move on? Twitter questions?
You couldn't have yelled, Maddie, can you get a cup?
Oh, I mean, at that point, he's already peeing everywhere. I mean, come on now. You can't tell the kid to stop.
I guess.
He had the look, and he wasn't gonna. He's Usain Bolt in the blocks.
Was it just that devilish look? Like, I know what I'm about to do here.
Oh yeah, he's smiling.
What are you gonna do about it?
He's smiling the whole time. I'm like, you littles.
Is he a miniature version of you? Is what I'm taking away here?
At times, yeah, and at times I'm like, gosh, the kid has got just. I don't know if all the screws are tied up there.
All right, let's get back into Twitter questions of the more pressing chat that you come for here. We'll start with Riley. How much improvement would Anthony Richardson need to show to prove to the Colts that they need to give him another year / show them he's the guy? I've been trying to come up with a stat line as well as how many games he would need to play, and I keep going back and forth. Thanks again.
Boy, it's such a great question. I mean, the stat line, how many games? Riley just pointed out. And the stat line, too, Eddie, is, it's three-pronged. It's, are you creating the big plays, which was the appeal of drafting him 4th overall? Are you hitting enough singles? And are you not turning the ball over? It probably is that last part, man. That is probably the most crushing from last year was the turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think you can, as wild as it sounds, you can live with a percentage that starts with a 5. It's not ideal, but you can't live with the turnover number.
But his didn't start with a 5. It started with a 4.
Well, yeah. Again, it has to increase, let me be clear, and it needs to be in the upper 5s if I can get a little bit more specific. But if I'm pointing to statistics, that turnover ratio as a rookie was a lot better than it was last season. So I would point directly to that. For games played, he's got to be at least at, what was he last year? Was he 4 games missed due to an injury last year? I'm trying to think. Flacco started 6. 2 of them was for benching.
Yeah, because you had the tap out, right? And the
he was benched for 2 weeks after the tap out, and
needing to recalibrate or whatever whatever they wanted to say.
Back injury at the end of the year, and the whatever it held was it spleen or not spleen? What was it? I forget what it was. Something abdominal related. Early in the season, a little bit of a storyline we haven't touched on too much. You think they draft a quarterback?
It makes a lot of sense. I meant to bring this up earlier, but it would make a lot of sense.
Should they draft a quarterback?
I would say yes.
Where? When?
Ooh, that is for a great debate, because if you're looking at Quinn Ewers, you're probably looking at a day 2 pick, right?
Yeah, I think I've seen Ewers kind of like 3rd round. Would you draft Shedeur Sanders if he's there at 14?
No. I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze there. Because you're just going to run into this issue now. You have to deal with, I'm assuming you would have to deal with Dion. You would have to deal with Shedeur. And then you would have to deal with the following of Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
Of people clamoring for him every second. And then, not to mention, you have the look of, hey, we just took another quarterback in the 1st round, and now you've got both Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson sitting there looking over their shoulder like, oh, I got to compete with this guy too?
Yeah, I would not. Yeah, I would not do it, but I just throw it out there for conversation. I think why I bring it up is this. Do you know how many games Sam Ehlinger has been your backup quarterback for the last couple of years?
I don't know, actually. Not many, is it?
A lot.
Oh, you're direct backup quarterback?
Right. Because Gardner Minshew started how many games in 2023?
I guess that's a good... Yeah.
I mean, Ellinger's been your backup for what, 15 times? 16 times?
Yeah, probably.
Because Flacco's backup for 6. And then how many did Gardner start? 12?
Was he the backup for Flacco for all 6, though?
Right? I mean, who else would have been? Jason Bean?
Well, I'm saying that there were games where Richardson was active.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So, like the Tennessee game,
he
I
was
remember that.
for the 2 benchings, right?
Yeah. I think,
so
I don't
2
know.
of the 6, I guess. So basically what I'm saying is Ellinger was your backup. Over the last 2 years, Ellinger was your backup, what, a dozen times? Obviously Minshew when Richardson was, gone. But that means you need a third quarterback, right?
Agreed.
If Richardson continues to have the health pattern that he has, your third quarterback's not a throwaway. Quinn Ewers, let's play this out. If Richardson were to get hurt for 2 months, Quinn Ewers is 1 play away behind Daniel Jones. So I'll be very interested to see if, when, how they add another quarterback. Right now it's Richardson, Jones, and Jason Bean. And that third quarterback could be your backup for a substantial period of time if you're in the camp of Richardson can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
So
I mean, through the first 2 seasons, the answer to that would be, yeah, he can't stay healthy.
And again, I'm a believer of you throw a dart at the board and
hell, even collegiately.
Every draft, I would draft a quarterback, and I get that sometimes you might be wasting a pick in round 6, but you've got 4 quarterbacks pretty much on your roster anyways nowadays. One of them on the practice squad, so just a storyline. I think it's worth watching.
Could edge be a sneaky position the Colts draft early? Cody wonders. I understand it's not necessarily a 2025 need, but there's nobody under contract outside of Leatu Latu after this season. What are your thoughts?
Boy, I don't think it's sneaky to me. I mean, I think we just kind of went over this. The blind faith is a bad phrase. The amount of faith they're putting in Samson Ebukam right now is kind of wild.
Yes. For a 30-year-old coming off of a torn Achilles?
And, I mean, he tore it, like a month before the season started last year?
Yeah.
It's not like it happened, like in March, and he's like 18 months removed to it, so... and I also would say this, Cody, premium positions should never be sneaky. Never. Especially when they affect the quarterback as much as that. So, when you mention the contract, I mean, Evacom, you're certainly banking on it. And again, no one is, under contract after the season. And I've always viewed Lewis as kind of more of an interior guy. You could really use some speed jolt, some speed off that edge, some juice off that edge. So, I'm not... I would not call it sneaky. I probably am a little bit more of a, hey, can you go a little bit of the veteran route to it and, find whatever, another version of a Tyquan Lewis, somebody like that to help you out from a depth standpoint. But no, I'm not gonna rule it out.
James would like you to put your general manager hat on. Which position, or which option, I should say, is easier / more realistic to draft? A starting quality right guard or a swing tackle? I'm not sure putting Matt Gonzalez from right tackle is the greatest move. Number 2, thanks as always for the pods.
Appreciate that, James. Yeah, what do they think of Gonzalez? That's a big question for this offseason. The thought by a lot of draft pundits was he was more of an interior guy at the NFL level. I'm trying to think. Last year, I do remember him taking a couple of snaps in camp at guard. But after that, I mean, hell, he was needed to start a lot at tackle. So, are you looking at Matt Gonzalez as your starting right guard in 2025, and then he's your right tackle of the future starting next year?
Can you do that? I mean, you can, but is it realistic?
You and I are both kind of shrugging our shoulders in here. Like,
is it beneficial to the player?
Right. That's probably the best way to put it. And, I mean, I've never viewed Penter as a guard.
Because, to me, when I think of guards, I think they're more they're shorter, they're stockier, they're more built.
Right.
Because they're in there with the hog mollies.
And shorter arms. Braden Smith's got the shorter arm. I mean, Braden Smith and Bernard Ryman both have very short arms, honestly, when you think about tackles. They both are kind of anomalies.
And then your tackles are more lean because they have to be able to move quicker because of the edge rushers. So
that's when I've seen Tyler Booker, for example, thrown to the Colts in a mock draft. Then it's okay, then Gonzalez is out there at right tackle for the long haul. if you play him at guard this year, then all of a sudden are you, to your point, stunting a little bit of his growth at right tackle? Because it's not like he played a ton in college.
Right.
The foot injury, he only played a few games his senior year. So that's a good one. I guess which option is easier, realistic to draft? I mean, I would say kind of just a quality guard. It's probably easier. I mean, you guys have long heard me say I think day 3 picks is kind of how your interior should look.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't undermine, what you need, especially from a swing tackle standpoint.
Benji would like to know, and I was going to ask this earlier, but I wanted to let Benji ask this question. Is Danny Pinter a candidate to play right guard?
I don't think so. Do you? I've always thought he's a better center than he is a guard.
Has he played much guard?
I think he did a little early in his career. I guess last camp he would have played a little bit of guard. So, yeah, I have not viewed him in that light. Now, they did re-sign him and Wesley French. Like, are those all centers? I mean, French started a couple of games in center back in the day. So, I guess all of this kind of comes back to the...
Is it a backup center competition, Kevin?
That is uncomfortable, right? I would say this, Eddie. I think we're at a point now where you and I are talking right now on March 26th. I'd almost be stunned if we got to April 26th and we didn't see a guard signed.
Yeah.
Now, maybe those are one of those things where the closer we get to the draft, those veteran free agents are like, I'm not signing. I'm waiting until after the draft.
Have we already hit that kind of?
Yeah, maybe we have.
I mean, you had Diggs sign yesterday.
Is some of this quarterback
Russell Wilson
money kind of playing out, and then we're going to get whatever, kind of our next wave off of that. So, to answer the question, Benji, I do not view Pinter as a starting guard candidate.
Final question is from Jamie. Do you think a positive impact of NIL is players playing longer, getting more experience, and better to play in the NFL? Just look at the lack of success for players like Anthony Richardson and Trey Lance versus first-year success for Bo Nix. Maybe not for every position, but quarterback for sure. I think when you compare those guys is that Richardson and Lance didn't have much college experience, and Bo Nix had the most starts in college football history.
Yeah, I would add COVID.
Yeah.
Everybody got the extra year. So Nix and Daniels were both COVID guys, right?
I'd have to check on Daniels to see if he used...
I'm pretty sure Daniels had like 50, 60 starts. So I think it's honestly getting that extra year. Now, again, NIL is helping out some of that, of the quarterbacks are staying in there. It's different, though. In the college game, there's a little bit of you have to stay in college for 3 years anyways. It was just Richardson started so late there. So, I think I've made this argument before about C.J. Stroud and Richardson. If you listed the 10 most at-stake games that those two have played in, Stroud's probably played in 8 of them, 9 of them, if you had to rank them, versus Richardson. Obviously it's a hot button topic right now, the NCAA tournament. To me, the NCAA tournament, it's how is the mid-major ever going to be alive again? Butler would never have made that second run.
Exactly.
Not to predict what Shelvin Mack would have done, but you know how much money Kentucky or Louisville would have paid Shelvin Mack to come back to that state and play for him? How much Indiana or Purdue maybe would have paid Matt Howard? And obviously Gordon Hayward went to the draft after the first year. So I would say mostly, though, Nix, Daniels, Stroud, the pure experience they got. They were very early starters. And it's going to be interesting how many college programs are going to commit to the young quarterback. Notre Dame, for example, Eddie, they've done the portal at quarterback now seemingly every year.
Except this year, right? Whereas
this year they're not. How do teams balance that? When do you commit to the hey, we might go 8-4 this year, but that will be worth it when we go 11-1 next year? Going with the young starter.
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
That is, I think, going to be difficult. And does the 5-star freshman stay for even a second year? That is also something that is going to be. So I don't want to turn this into an NIL rant, but I'll just say this. We're driving on a rural Texas highway right now, and we got to be on 465. We need some guardrails. We need some speed limits. I'm not saying we need to be on Carmel roundabouts, but we can't be on a Texas rural highway. We can't.
No.
And that's where we're at right now. So we'll see how it all plays out this offseason. And I would say that across all college sports. You know, I guess football and basketball mainly. But just give me a little bit of regulation for it. Because name, image, likeness, I mean, that's the dumbest acronym I've ever heard. It's free agency. It's not name, image, likeness. It's not Eddie Garrison, the star at UND, and going to sign autographs at whatever. Insert your Southside location here. It's free agency. And, you know, at the college level, these mid-major teams, you know, if you're the head coach at Purdue and you play Northern Kentucky, and Eddie, you see me average 10 points as a freshman, you're going to be like, that dude's averaging 10 as a freshman. That means he's going to average 16 as a sophomore. Let's get on that now.
Yeah.
Let's get him here. We'll increase his money. Hopefully he'll develop, and boom. It's no longer like you have to reach the Conference Player of the Year status.
Right.
They're getting to you earlier than that. You got anything else over there?
No, owners meetings this weekend. A bunch of your colleagues, Stephen Holder, and I'm sure James Boyd will be out there. Joel Erickson or Nate Atkins making the hike?
I think Joel is. Yeah, I think Joel Erickson will be down there as well. Colts production team usually down there. So, yeah, we'll react to that coming up midweek next week. Auburn losing to Houston in the title game. I don't have much intact, but that's still intact.
I'm sticking to my guns, KB. All of my Elite Eight teams are still playing. All of my Final Four teams are still playing. And my national championship game, the Houston Cougars and the Florida Gators.
So you and I both with the same right side rep, different left side. I actually have Maryland over Florida here in the Sweet. I got Maryland in the Final Four. So thank you, Derek Queen, and thank you to those officials for not calling a travel on that shot.
Stop.
He's Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen signing off. 107.5, thefan.com.